Oh, I guess I better wait for the boss man.
Tim, he was outside still, or did he go?
No, he's in. He's in.
Okay. And it's 1:30 on the phone, so technically you're not late.
That wall clock's lying.
Nice.
Chris, I gotta get.
That's a good idea. I'm gonna try that at home.
All them kids?
All right, it's 1:30. I call the Rockdale Planning and Zoning meeting of Tuesday, July the 1st, 2025 to order. Could I have a roll call, please?
Chair Williams.
Here.
Vice Chair Ratliff.
Here.
Commissioner Miles.
Here.
Commissioner Flores.
Here.
Commissioner Houston. Commissioner Mendoza.
Here.
Commissioner Higdon.
Here.
So we have a quorum. Y'all stand as we do the Pledge of Allegiance. Remain standing as we have the invocation. I pledge allegiance to
the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this gorgeous day that you've given us. Lord, please be with us in this meeting, guide our thoughts and guide our words and our decisions that we make, that they all might be pleasing to you. Lord, watch over our families and keep them safe. All of this we ask in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Be seated. Any citizens' communications?
No, sir.
All right. Did you want to give a presentation, Ben?
We'll do the swear-ins and then I'll do it.
I'm just trying to. All right. So where do you want the candidate
Just
commissioners?
stand up where you're at. You'll raise your right hand and we'll just do this together. Repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Jane Mendoza,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will faithfully execute
that I will faithfully execute
the duties of my appointed office of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
to the duties of my
Appointed office
appointed office
of the Planning and Zoning
of the Planning and Zoning
of the State of Texas
of the State of Texas,
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will to the best of my knowledge
preserve, protect, and defend
protect and defend
the Constitution and laws
the Constitution and laws
of the United States
of the United States
and of this state,
and the state
of the City of Rockdale,
of the City of Rockdale,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Welcome aboard. That brings us back to a full commission again, right? Yay. Little word of knowledge to you guys that just got here. You cannot move, you cannot quit, and you cannot die before me. This is the last set of names I'm putting down.
Where has Scott been? Is he still our?
Well, so now you have Daniel Willie as your liaison.
Hi, Ben, could you give us a report?
Yes, so as Doug's referring to, he could not make our city council meeting, so you'll get that presentation from me today. There's only a couple items that I wanted to share with you on what's been going on. Of course, we have the 2 new commissioners, so thank you guys for applying. As far as the sign ordinance, it was passed. I do want to give an update on it because we spoke about the electronic signs, and so I've reached out to our attorney because a question was asked whether we could regulate current electrical signs and how they present that message. And it seems that we may not be able to stop them from scrolling that are existing, so they can continue to act as is, and any new would be not grandfathered in that context any further. I'm going to keep pushing against that just for the purpose of when you change your message, in my opinion, that would take your grandfather status off. But that will be an attorney discussion to discuss further. But it seems to be pointing the way that they will continue to operate as is.
We have 2.
We have several that do either blinking messages, some motion in their messages, or actually scroll the message. And with the ordinance you guys adopted, that wouldn't be allowed any longer. We still allow electronic signage, it's just a standstill message.
Could you repeat the end of why you said you're going against it? I didn't hear the
Well,
part.
so usually how grandfather statuses work is when you've established something, either built or installed something before an ordinance is adopted, it's considered grandfathered in because there was not a regulation against it at the time.
Right.
And then the city adopted one.
Right.
So you get to continue to use that as is, but you cannot expand that use is what that terminology they'll use. So usually that's adding square footage or changing anything to it.
Right.
Well, with the electronic message sign, I would think that if you're changing the message, then you're changing the sign, and you'd have to bring that new message into compliance. You would program that message to where it's a static message instead of scrolling. The attorney has said otherwise, but we're still discussing it because it's a not as black and white topic as we thought it would be. So I'll continue to update you guys as we have that discussion because we have several signs that do operate in that manner.
How many did you say?
Well, off the top of my head, I know of 4. that I can think of now.
Like the chamber.
You have the chamber, you have the bank that has a couple of messages that will do that. Some school signs do that.
And as of now, they're grandfathered in.
They are. So that right now we're going to let them operate as is.
Okay.
And we're going to keep going that route unless something changes in that discussion. But I just want to let the planning commission know because I told you guys the other that we would be calling them to halt that operation. We're not going to do that at this time. So I just wanted that to be on record. For the preliminary plat for 1635 North FM 908, where the lot was too small to the north, they approved it just as you guys had commented. And then another item that you didn't get to see is the Red Stag Grill came in and they asked for a rebate on their mixed beverage alcohol, which was approved. It's a new, nicer restaurant that's going to come into the downtown area, and it was approved by council. They put in some language that they would actually allow that to transfer to a similar type of business. And with that, that is all from the city council meeting. If there's any questions.
So it's a similar business, it's just a continuance, in other words?
Well, the Red Stag is going to be a restaurant. The concern from the city council was if a bar came in, because this is for their mixed beverage, that if a bar came in, it would be an unfair for all the other bars that are in town that they don't get that same. So they wanted to put some language in that if another restaurant came in, that would just transfer over. But if it was a different type of business, that they would not allow that to transfer over.
There is
So
a new restaurant.
if they end up selling to another full-service restaurant, they would continue to get that. And it was, I think, a 10-year rebate
10 year.
on, partial rebate on mixed beverage.
And where is it gonna be? Downtown?
This is going to be in the downtown. I believe it's going to be in the Snug, is what was said.
Yeah, next to the library, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay. That used to be the bakery.
The old bookstore too. Well, they have the old bookstore,
Christian bookstore?
the Christian bookstore. They have that as their office, and the building right next to it will be the restaurant.
Tony, the old sewing machine place.
Yeah.
None of these in here have a clue what we just
They
said.
would plan, $950,000 in renovations.
Oh.
So,
Yeah, it's going to be a major project. They've already started submitting plans, and I can tell you those are extensive. And so it's going to be very nice.
I know that they were talking about their underground cell.
That's
So
right.
did
They're
they
thinking
get
about
that?
doing an underground wine cellar. That is in their plans.
Very interesting. Any other questions regarding the last city council meeting?
I just had a question about the sign thing. I don't remember if it stemmed from distraction, right? From the rolling.
Right. So the intention of the sign ordinance, even outside of electronic signage, is about traffic. Because your concern is signage is drawing attention away from the roadway, so you want to regulate in a manner that would prevent someone from looking over as much.
And I believe the stipulation on it was like 8 or 9 seconds. It has to remain still, and then it can.
Yeah, then it would change its message so that way you're not
Yeah, just
constantly following a moving
yeah,
screen
just
until
can't
you
be
pass
actively
it.
moving. Yeah.
All right, then we'll move on to action items. Number 3, review and approve the minutes from the meeting on June the 3rd, 2025. And that should be the next page in your packet. Any questions on the minutes? I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion to approve. We have a second. All those in favor, right hand, please. Motion made, seconded, and carries. Received a monthly code enforcement report. Hello.
All right. For those that are new, the Planning Commission a few years ago asked for a code report from the Development Services to know what's going on in the community. And so what we do is we'll break down the numbers by the month, and then we'll give you the year total, and then we actually keep a total of when the city started doing proactive code enforcement in 2021. So for the month, I do want to clarify, I'm going to give you slightly different numbers than what you see. Just because the timing of this meeting fell on the 1st, code enforcement went back out after this monthly report was created due to the requirements of having this out in a certain time. And so for the trash and debris, for the breakdown of each violation, we had a total of 45 this year. And this goes by fiscal year just for our new members. So our fiscal year starts October 1st and ends September 30th. Now, as far as high grass and weeds cases, we actually have done 176. So we had 2 new ones when we went back out instead of the 174. And then we've had 23 other cases, which can be ranging from anywhere from a property maintenance violation to not pulling building permits. And then the breakdown of the fiscal of how those cases stand, we've actually completed 190 of those cases instead of the 186. 4 are still currently open in court instead of 6. And then we have 50 cases open currently that have not met the timeline to go to the municipal court because they do get a certain time frame before they go talk to the judge.
Can you give us an example of someone doing something that didn't have a permit?
So typically it's going to be roofing is real common. People will replace a roof and that requires a permit.
Hot water heater.
Hot water heaters are common. It's your common
Putting a sign up.
signs. Yeah, fencing is another one that is a common that will be. Most of those others, I will tell you, are actually property maintenance violations, not building permits. So it's more tree overhang in the road, or siding that is in disrepair on the side of your house, broken windows, things of that nature is more going to be your others. We haven't had too many no permits this year, but we've had a few.
So these fall basically under our ordinances?
All of this is within your ordinances. Now, to clarify that answer, there are certain things that are adopted by ordinance that are specified in a code book. So there's a thing called the International Code Council, for those who do not know, and that specifies your building codes and your property maintenance codes, existing building codes, a lot of different codes, and that has your high grass in there. That has your property maintenance violations. That's the book that we used to shut down the budget in, because the way that they were operating was, the way they were renting those rooms was a permanent stay, and in the property maintenance code, it requires a certain size of the room to be a permanent stay, and they were too small of a room to operate. So those are one of the main tools. That book's a very small book, but it's a very powerful book.
In the open case, how many of those are related tires?
So none of them now. But as Tim's speaking, we did get confirmation from the attorney. 2 years ago, the city adopted a tire distributor and producer registration requirement, which means tire businesses now have to register with the city. The intent behind that is to get them to clean up and store their tires properly so they're not containing water, which leads to mosquitoes. It's a new thing with cities. TCEQ used to regulate it, and I believe they still regulate it a little bit, but it's not been enforced very strictly by TCEQ, so cities are starting to adopt their own ordinances because they can. And so our ordinances can be more strict than TCEQ.
The city of Burnett can tell you that right now.
Yeah. And so
They've got a major tire fire at one of those.
And that's the concern with tires outside of the water, is if they do catch on fire, you're not putting it out. So they're just going to burn until it's done. And so anyways, with this registration, they would register yearly. To register, they have to comply with how they store those tires and how they remove those tires. And so we've gotten confirmation.
Lighting stage.
We've sent the notices out at the beginning of last month. We've given 90 days because we're starting this again, because we needed to ensure, since this is such a new idea, that this is enforceable and legal, and it is. And so we are moving forward with it. And so they've had 90 days at the beginning of June. They'll have to register, or they will be getting court complaints on them, and they'll have to shut down until they register. And then after that, they'll continue their registration up. So they won't keep getting 90 days. They'll have to re-register before that license expires, and staff will keep up with that. So right now, we've sent 5, I believe, that we know that are selling tires in a quantity large enough that would actually determine that they're a tire distributor.
How often do they register? Is it like once a year?
It's going to be once a year that they'll register, so they'll get an annual inspection from myself and our building official, and we'll actually go out on site. There's several requirements they have to meet, but the main concern is how they're storing those tires, and then also how they're removing it. So on the application, it lists, if you're transporting those tires out, your vehicle is supposed to be registered with TCEQ, and they'll give you a number, so you have to tell us what those vehicles are that are removing the tires, where you're taking the tires. So
And do you have the authority to inspect even if they're stored inside a building?
if there's a suspected hazard, then yes, the city has the authority to inspect. Your property maintenance code book calls out for that. Other code books call out for stipulations that if there's a major health hazard concern, that city officials must be let into the property. But them as a license, they would be required to allow a city official in for a reasonable cause. So we'd have to suspect that there is a violation occurring that would cause for that inspection.
And the initial reason was because of the tires being shown, right?
Well, the major reason is the health hazard concern of it holding water or it catching on fire. Because if a, and I could be wrong, but if a tire pile catches on fire, depending how big that could be, it could be on fire for weeks.
Yeah, but I think we started looking into it because of the visual. We were trying to clean up, and
Yeah.
then we started doing more research into it, and then it came about. So
Yeah, so that's the intent behind it is, so just so everybody's up to speed, we are enforcing that again, and so they've been notified, and all 5 have either claimed their mail or did not claim it, which still counts that the mail went there, so everybody is aware that they will have to re-register.
And you said none are in court. So the ones that were, didn't we have some in court? Or on the
Well,
way?
we never put any tires in court due to the questionable of the
Okay.
legality,
Okay.
since it's such a new idea, and it's unfortunately taken such a long time to get a response on
Okay.
if that was legal, but we finally got one, and so now the city's moving forward confidently that we can get these to comply.
Did they also fall into the outdoor storage ordinance? If they were not, that's what they're saying, like, that's what they're saying.
Yeah. But to get back on the code report, for our total numbers since we've taken the code enforcement back from the police department and been tasked to do proactive code enforcement instead of reactive, we've completed 1,338 cases instead of the 1,334. We currently have 7 that are open in court, and then the 50 remain open due to the timeline.
Ben, we started this so that we could identify ordinances that needed tweaking, whether they were weak or not valuable, or whether they something we need to address. I know we're fixing to go into the master plan review. Have you found anything that we need to be concerned about as far as ordinances and,
As far as relating to code enforcement?
yeah,
No. I mean, if you look at our compliance rate on that second sheet, we're actually at a 96%, which is very high for code enforcement. And then we have 3% that are open because it's the 50, and then we have 1% of them that are in court that have not complied. I think any code enforcement department would be very happy with that number. Especially, this community is very good at remediating those violations before they even go into court. Most of the cases don't make the court system, which is saves our court a lot of time from having to set up those pre-trials and trials.
Money.
It does. It saves the taxpayer money as well because you're not paying for that. So, as far as the compliance rate on that end, I think that it's good. You know, I'm hoping at some point that maybe the city can get an additional code officer, so that way we can go back to door hanger violations first instead of sending a letter first. That would be something that I would prefer. It's just a nicer way to handle it than actually sending a letter the first time.
yeah.
But with how time permits, we have to operate as a letter first for the amount of violations that we see.
How do individuals dispose of tires?
We have some that have a truck coming in town from Houston, and they pay them to take them off.
But I mean, the individual that wants to get rid of one tire.
You can take them to the tire place and pay them. Well, they used to charge. They charge $5 now. It used to be like $3 or $2, but now you take $5 per tire.
You can do that, or you can go to a special event. There's rarely, but it happens. There's some special events where it's tire cleanups that you can take them to. But usually it's like a county thing that you have to live in that county or you have to live in that city.
Someone just dumped a tire on my property.
Yeah,
Question I need.
yeah, you can take it to a tire shop for maybe one or two is your best bet to take it to.
I'm sorry.
A tire place would be your best bet for maybe one or two of them. Because some places have a shredder on site that they'll just shred it for you. Some, like Pearl said, actually get a truck to come in and take it to a special landfill.
I have a question regarding the trash and debris. What is the time frame on that? Y'all give out a notice to a resident, and what is the time frame on that?
So code enforcement is going to be the same for any code letter you get. You get 10 days from the receipt of the letter. And so,
For the new members, back up and say, you go out on one side of the town one day, give them the whole.
okay. So the way code enforcement operates currently is we treat everybody the same. And so what I mean by that is we have a route system developed where we're out every day of the week, but we're looking at one property once a week. So that way we're not bombarding somebody by looking at their property 3 times and we're only looking at their neighbor 1 time. Everybody gets the same treatment of their once a week we see them, and then we're scheduled. We change the day so that way they don't know when we're going to be there, just so that way you don't learn that code enforcement looks at my property on Wednesday, so I'm going to put my trash out on Thursday. You know. So that's why we do it that way. But as far as how that works, when we notice a violation, specifically for trash and debris, the first time we see it, we actually do not cite it. Because there are a lot of instances where somebody, you just caught them at a bad time, that maybe they unboxed a TV, they put it outside by the road, they're going to break down the box tomorrow when they have time. So we try to give people a chance. When it's out there for the second week, then we'll send a notice to wherever that trash was, and they get 10 days from receipt of a letter, which is typically a 20-day process because the mailing system usually takes at least a week to get it to you. And then at that point, if they call city staff, we will work with them on a timeline that is appropriate. And what I mean by that is we'll give a maximum of 30 days.
Are those letters sent out certified mail?
The letters currently are not sent out certified. Typically you would, and that's the way we want to do it. That's why I mentioned we want to go back to door hangers, so that way we're not sending very many letters. So when you do send a letter, it would be certified. But currently we do not operate on the certifieds.
So when you say you guys will go out and help them, does that mean like you'll go out and help them get rid of the trash and debris, or?
We'll give them a grace period.
Oh, another grace period, okay.
Yeah, we won't actually go outside and help them clean it up. You know, there's been instances where we have, but it's usually for minor things, and they needed some help at the time, but it's not a common practice.
What we can do is if they do not clean up the property, we can go out and do the work and then bill them for that work.
You used to be able to call the city for a trash pickup for a fee, is that still?
Yes, there's still a couple ways you can do it. We have a dumpster where, depending what you bring those items in, would be the fee. So if you bring in a truckload, it's the cheapest fee you're going to have, and then if you bring it to a single axle trailer, it's going to be a little bit more expensive, and so on and so forth. You also have the option to call in a bulk item for the trash company to pick up, which is an additional fee that gets placed on your water bill. And then you also could wait for the events where you store it maybe inside in your garage, and then you bring it outside when there's an event for a bulk item pickup for free. There's multiple ways that you can get rid of those items. But yeah, as Tim's referring to it, the way the court system works is you have to put them in court if they don't comply. And if they refuse to comply after being in court, the city can actually take the steps to clean that for you, and then you would get billed with whatever it costs it to do so. So you get billed the man hours for whomever you're paying to do that, and for the equipment that was used if necessary. And it'd be put as a lien on the property.
That bulk cleanup is amazing. If you can get somebody to load up a trailer for them, it's for free. All you gotta do is take it out there. Be a resident of the city.
And what I'll tell you is usually when we see trash, we'll call people and tell them, you know, you have a month until this bulk pickup. If there's any way you can get this off the curb for a month and then bring it, you can do it for free, and they'll usually remove them for that month.
You can call them too if you see something that needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah, I will say that we do appreciate the help that we get from citizens because there are only two gentlemen looking at your city. And when you drive around the city a lot, sometimes you don't see things that others would see. And so we appreciate when people call and do assist on helping us with something that's seen. I will say for those that are new though, code enforcement has to work from right of way. So just keep that in mind when you call something in. We either have to work on the street or within an alleyway. We cannot walk on in on somebody's property and try to find the trash. So we've had cases where we had people call in, it's behind a privacy fence, and there's just no way for us to see it. And so I cannot cite a violation for that.
How about unregistered vehicle, like the tags are out years ago?
So you can call us, or you can call the non-emergency police number. I'll tell you that that's a police department function, that they're handling the junk vehicles currently. And so
It's still something
is.
that's in play.
it is in play, and they're enforcing it more strictly now. And the goal is to keep enforcing it more strictly as we get more staff positions to operate that.
But that again it has to be visible from the right of way.
Yeah.
Now, if they suspect it, they can go on the property to inspect closer.
I can think a couple off the top of my head that are pretty
If they see
visible.
a vehicle from the street and they suspect it's a improperly licensed vehicle, but they can't see the license plate from where it's parked, they can actually go on the property.
You know, and I will say that they have a list. The development services gave them a list of what we suspected was junk vehicles when we were out conducting the parking on grass analysis. We just combined the effort, and so we gave them a notice. And I know a lot of notices did get sent out to individuals that they did have junk vehicles. I don't know where they're at on that list, but you can always call in because we could have missed one of them.
That's probably about the same timeline as far as giving them like a month to move it or something like that.
Junk
That's the
vehicles,
police department, but-
yeah, they typically operate on the same timeline, but they are a little different. I can't quite comment on what that procedure is like.
If the junk vehicle is actually parked on the street in the curb, it can be towed immediately.
Okay.
If it's on,
If it's on the street.
yeah.
Towed
if it's on the
immediately?
curb, If the junk vehicle is left on the curb in the right of way, it can be towed immediately. If it's on private property, then you have to send a notice, and they have a certain time frame to.
I know on highways it's 24 hours, I believe. That you, if I don't know if you've ever seen a car on the highway that you see the orange tag on it, that's their 24-hour period to get that removed. They're gonna tow it. I thought on local roads it's 72 hours.
But that is for just abandoned vehicles. But junk vehicles, if it's improperly, if it doesn't,
Doesn't have any tires on it.
if it's cleaned up,
Unregistered.
Yeah, if
if it
it's
has an expired plate, and
Okay, under monthly code enforcement report, any further questions? And this is all good stuff, we're gonna have to all get up to speed, so sorry for it taking so long, but
no.
thank you.
If you have any questions, never hesitate to ask either in this meeting or you can call me after the meeting if something comes up that you didn't think about in the meeting. I'd always happy to talk to you guys.
Action item number 5, receive the Development Services Department report.
Okay, so this is a report that we give the Planning Commission on what's going on in the permitting world and the development world. And so the numbers for the month of June, we've issued 15 building permits, 2 demolition permits, 4 electrical, 1 HVAC, and 5 plumbing. In those building permits, 4 of those were new homes that estimated at about $534,000 in improvements. I will also add that there were about $1 million, a little over, that was invested in other projects, whether it was through remodels, roofing, or fencing. And that number is so high because there was a new commercial building project that was issued a permit this month.
where does Republic Ridge stand? Have you heard anything?
So Republic Ridge, for those that were not on the commission at the time, is a subdivision that is just along Texas Street on the north side of Belton, where they're proposing to do a housing development. Those were 30-foot and 40-foot lots that were approved under a special zoning classification. Their builder had walked out on them, and so they have since stalled. But I've received some news from the developer that there may be a new builder in the works. I'm not clear if the builder is going to use the current lots that are out there, or if they're going to want a slightly bigger project. If they do need a bigger project, just for your guys' information, you will see it again, because it will be a new zoning classification. You'll see a new plat that develops those lots, so you'll do the whole process over again. But they could build it how it is designed now and move forward with the 30s and 40s if they choose to.
And there is a third subdivision, potentially in the works, that is moving relatively quickly, so.
Question. Are you talking about the one going towards Alcoa, Riot?
I'm sorry?
It's supposed to be on the right side, going towards Taylor?
For what? The new subdivision?
subdivision.
No.
No?
No, we're talking about, what he's referring to is one that is going to be within the city. They'll annex in, but it's still under the works right now. So we'll give information as we can
West
give
side of
it.
town? Is that, okay, yeah.
The reason I asked is I know there was a subdivision or something supposed to be built right outside of Rockdale
Yeah.
to the right, and then I heard that it's going to be Thorndale instead of Rockdale, so I was wondering if that was Same deal.
Maybe two coffee
Yeah,
shop
I think,
stories. So-
yeah, I think that, if that one may be a different one, because this one is pretty committed
Yeah.
to Rockdale, and it's actually, like Tom said, it's moving faster than they normally do.
Yeah. And we were talking about the concrete homes project?
Yeah, so on Wilcox, if you go out there on Wilcox going towards the baseball fields, you'll see a lot of dirt work to your right-hand side if you're going towards the baseball fields. That is where the new concrete homes were proposed to be at. They're currently working on some infrastructure plans. There were some amendments that had to be made to how they're going to do their water and wastewater. So they're working on that with our engineer, and then they will move forward, and you should start seeing homes being built out there either by end of this year or maybe beginning of next for that. There were 14 lots in that subdivision, if I can recall.
Yeah.
The plan that was proposed is the concrete home developers are going to develop a few of those lots, and then they're going to allow some other folks to come in and show off their products of concrete homes and things of that nature as well. So you may have a mixed development out there that's not just all from one builder.
Going towards the softball field, it's on the right in between this,
The baseball. If you go towards the baseball field on
baseball field.
Wilcox, it'd be on the right-hand side.
and then the cemetery is on the other side.
That's right. If you look at it right now, everything is cleared off, so you'll see the cemetery straight through.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of dirt out there right now with a couple trees left in the lot.
So it's got traction again.
They have traction. That's right. I did not know that they were going to get that traction again, but it appears that they are moving forward. And so I received an email from them maybe 2 days ago that they're moving forward on getting those infrastructure plans.
But no
updated.
permits. I mean,
No permits have been issued yet, but they have to do their site work first before we're going to issue them a building permit. They have not applied for a permit, so I haven't seen their structural plans. So they still have that timeline of a week or so for review from the city, especially because this is going to be such a new project that we haven't seen a concrete home yet. So I'll have to work with our inspector closely to see what he wants to see to ensure that those meet the codes.
Has Cornerstone pulled any permits?
Cornerstone was part of those new homes that have pulled permits. I believe there were 3 of those. And so they're going at a slower pace than they were last year.
Yeah.
But they're still pulling permits. And I've issued a few more COs as of this week for a couple of their houses out there.
So we still have traction.
They still have traction. They've moved forward with phase 1D, 1E, and 1F for their horizontal construction, their roads, their water, their sewer. Is all going to be starting here soon. As far as their building, they're still on phase 1A. They're about 80% done. And then they're also working on 1B at the same time. So I think I've issued about 6 or 7 permits for 1B.
Sidewalk project?
Sidewalk project for the along Main, is that what you're referring to? I believe that's going along. I have not heard anything.
Yeah, it's probably about 65% complete.
Yeah.
But I know they had to come back and re-pour a driveway coming out of the bank building on Milam Avenue.
Oh, yeah, I saw, okay.
Yeah.
I saw the red paint. Yeah.
But that one's, other than that, that one's running pretty smoothly.
Is it going straight down then?
There's several different areas. I'd have to pull the map to refer, but there's some along Bell, I believe, as well. There's going to have a few new sidewalks. There's going to be some along Milan.
Okay.
There's going to have some, it's different areas. It's just, we call it the Main Street Sidewalk Project.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's a-
About when would I go back to see some reference material on one of the meetings?
So that actually didn't come to the Planning Commission. That was
Okay,
a
that'd be-
project spearheaded by the MDD.
Okay.
It's just under developmental, I mean.
Yeah, that's just something going along in the city.
That's more MDD, where you would
Yeah.
have to go.
Jim pursued that and did a good job with it.
Yeah.
Bell, Milam, Maine, is it about the only 3 or?
Yeah, I think so. I know there's a few alternates in there, but I don't know if they got bid out or not. That may have been some others, but I think those are the 3 main ones when I went out there to review it with them before they started.
And the Cornerstone, that was in the $500,000 or the $1 million? The permits,
So Cornerstone,
the permits for, were they?
they're going to be part of your half for the new homes.
Okay.
I will tell you one of those homes is we issued another home program project on Highland. And so that makes up 150,000 of that 500 and something thousand. The rest of it's all Cornerstone projects that have been issued this month.
And our home,
I'm glad I said that because I actually want to invite the Planning Commission. Joe Cortez is having his key turnover next week. I'm going to have Shanna send you guys an invite for the occasion. I can't recall what the day is, but it is in the morning that we're actually going to turn those keys over on Pine Street. And so that's a big deal. For those that have not been here, that has been...
Great minds think alike, because I was wondering if I could get a list of all those that were involved with that project, but you're already on it, so
Yeah,
kudos.
so we've invited the city council, and we want to invite you guys to attend. It's a big deal. For those that have not been aware, it has been a long process. The state has done something new that they've never done before with this land swap, so this is a big success if we can get these keys turned over and get him in that house.
Okay, so we have some new commissioners. Are y'all aware whose property we're talking? Okay, the property, 4 houses back up here that's falling down used to be a cleaners. It was a long, drawn-out process to get those people into the home program, and then city now has that, or MDD, city has that property. Now, he's getting a new home.
By State Park, on
By the-
Pine Street.
Yeah.
Go ahead, y'all.
So we did a land swap. What had happened was we met with the Cortez family And Councilmember Perry actually spearheaded this and asked them if they wanted to remain on the highway or would like to get off of it. We were under the impression that they'd have to stay there, but the state opened the door and said, that we could actually do a land swap. And so the Cortez family really wants to get off the highway because it's hard for them to back in and get on that. So we've done a land swap. The lands were nearly identical in value from what we swapped over. There was a $2,000 difference that the Cortez family signed off that they were okay with that difference. And so we did the land swap. So that house on Pine is theirs. They're going to own that land. That land that they're on right now is city land. They've signed a waiver saying that if anything happens to that house while they're living in it, that they're waiving us of that because they can't afford to go into another place. They couldn't find anybody to get them into another place. So the demolition will occur. I've asked the builder to do it as soon as possible. So the Cortez family asked for 2 weeks after they get the keys to get all their stuff out of the Cameron house and into Pine. And so we've granted them that. So hopefully soon after that, we will be getting that demolished before it falls in on itself.
August,
That would be,
September?
no, that you're talking about either late July or early August because we're turning the keys over his house to the house next week. So you just add 2 more weeks on top of that, and then hopefully we're getting that demolished. It's, yeah.
You know the date yet or not yet?
We do. I'm gonna double check because I don't want to say it on the mic and give anybody the wrong impression. I'll double check and then I'll forward you guys the invite. It's in the morning at 10:30, I believe.
At what time?
10:30. It's usually about a 30-minute turnover. If you guys want to go, but if you've never been, it is amazing to see how life-changing it is for those folks to get those keys.
Well, then, no.
Thank you.
I came in on the back end of that, so I knew like roughly what it was.
It
That
was
a
a
worrisome
long.
project, but it's well worth.
It was worth it.
We're one of the only in the home program in the state of Texas, right? Is that right? That did a land swap like that?
Yeah, I think we're the first ones. I mean, if there was another one, we didn't get the experts on the case because it was a process from everybody from the state to us to figure out how to make this work and follow their guidelines.
But basically, the state's still gonna demolish the house once they move.
With the city is, so we're inquiring that cost.
Okay.
They pay for a certain percentage of it, and it's not going to cover that whole demolition with how that ended up being. So the city's actually going to pay for the rest of it to get that demolished.
They're great people, so I'm sure that's well deserved.
Yeah, it is. It has been good working with them.
Great. Good to know.
It's good to have good news every once in a while, guys.
News report.
I guess in the last meeting, you talked about a $15 million worth of investment from permits. What was it? Let's see. But anyway, it's a spinoff that we haven't had funds coming through in a long time to help the city, and it's good
Yeah,
to
I mean
have-
that's what development will do. Development will start to get you a bigger tax base. Also they're paying the permitting fees that will help you. Permitting does not make that much money. If it used to not make any at all, we used to just cover our cost, but now we charge a 10% just so that way we can have a little bit of an income. But where you're going to get your funds are is going to be from taxes and your water and sewer. And so when those buildings come online, people start to live in those. That's when you'll start to see the city coffers get a little bit more money to start making much needed improvements.
I haven't talked to Jim. Are we anywheres with the business part? Do you know?
I talked to Jim and he has a few in the works.
Yes, so actually the MDD has made an offer on a 100-acre piece of land. They have a LOI that they've submitted. I haven't heard back whether that is closed, and they had an industry that came to the last meeting that they are submitting, a developer that's submitting a bid on a project to put a new business on that property, which would be huge. It's like $60 million of investment and 130 jobs.
And where's the property? Is it still on the east side?
It's on the north side off of Main.
Yeah, the northeast side.
Oh.
I think it's off of Maine, I believe. But
So there's hope.
there is things in the pipeline. Just
there is
know
hope, guys.
development takes quite a while. It does, and so the subdivision he referred to is actually pretty unique with how fast they're moving. Usually development takes a few years.
Yeah, we were going pretty good, and then that interest rate hike or whatever
Yeah.
killed the real estate market hit, and now we're starting finally to get a little, I call it traction, but we're starting to move a little bit.
Yep.
So.
What was the peak, I guess, in building permits for Cornerstone when they first started? What was,
They had a month where I think they hit like 13, and that was pretty high. I think they typically average around like 7 to 8 for a few months in a row, and then they kind of dropped off to 3 to 4, and now they've stayed at that 3 to 4 level since then.
So I think last year they issued 40.
Yeah, right around 40, and now we're up to I think 54 or something along those lines. So they haven't done near as much this year as they did by this time as last year, but they also started off really hot last year.
no, I talked to the guy, Brian, out there, sales rep for D.R. Horton, and, I mean, he's saying what you just said, or what Joe said about how it kind of took a dive and then it's going back up slowly, and he said the same thing, that it's coming back, it's it's gonna take a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see it, I mean, I probably from December, it was kinda quiet in building, and then it picked back up.
Yeah, they
few
went on
months
a
ago.
hiatus,
Yeah.
I think, from September to January,
Yeah.
that they didn't pull any permits. You know, but they also say that their home season starts in the spring, where they really want to start building and getting them on the market. So I expected it to raise more than it has, but with, as Doug said, the interest rates, you know,
Yeah.
it makes sense why it's been slower. But they are still pulling permits, so they have not stalled.
And that month timeline that you gave was about the time where some of the housing market numbers started peaking out and rolling over, and so I think everybody's kind of like hands off, just
Yeah.
watching and waiting to see what happens. So it's reassuring that they're starting to come back.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions on the Development Services Department report? If not, action item 6, consider to take any necessary action on a recommendation to the City Council regarding a final plat submitted by Winston Parks for property located at 618 West Highway 79 into 3 lots. This is also known as the Vet Clinic property, if you'd like to hear it called that.
Yes. So this plat has already been seen by you guys before, but now you're seeing it in a final plat format. So again, for those that are new, the way platting works is it sets up your lot lines, and so you'll hear different terminology. The key ones that we're going to talk about today is preliminary plats and final plats. So what a preliminary plat does is it develops the lot lines, and it tells you this is how we want our development to be. And in that, they tell you whatever infrastructure they're going to have to install, whether it's going to be drainage control, new water lines, new sewer lines. They give you all those plans in a preliminary plat. They'll submit it to the city. The city will then review it and approve it if necessary. If it's approved, then they then improve everything into the ground, and then they submit a final plat. And on the final plat, it's just a finalized version of this is what we've done, this is what we put in the ground. You guys can now file this plat as it's official, and then it'll actually take into those lots. So it actually split in this case into 3 different lots. So right now, this is all one just big piece of land. They're proposing 3 different lots for 3 different developments. Now, with that being said, and something that developers would do, and this is happening in this case, they have not installed their infrastructure yet, but what they're going to do is if they get this approval from you guys, they're going to install, and the city will hold this plat for recordation until they get the improvements in and we accept them. So we won't file the plat until it's done.
Zoning?
The zoning out here is commercial. They do not need any zoning changes. As far as on the plat, it's a very clean plat because this is their second submittal. The only thing that the staff has identified is they dedicate a drive lane easement. And anytime you dedicate a drive lane or any type of easement for vehicular traffic, you want to do what's called in perpetuity, so forever and always through the land. So that way it's just there forever and it will never come off. So that way each lot has a guaranteed access off of that drive lane. And then we just ask for clarification. They have a detention pond here to the south, and you can't see it, but they have a line that goes through the drive lane that also says detention pond, and you can't have a concrete drive lane and a detention pond in the same spot. And so we just asked for clarification. I looked at their actual submittal of their drainage, and it looks like there is no overlap. It's just the way that this easement was drawn was a little odd, and so they just need to clarify that it just does not overlap, because that would not work. Other than those 2 minor comments, the plat meets all of your requirements. Again, it's going to be held for recordation until they actually improve the property and put those items in, and then it will be recorded as a final plat. And they will also not get their certificate of occupancy for their building to inhabit until the final plat is recorded.
Can they get the other permits?
They can. The city,
And water runs on the other side of the highway?
the water is actually on their side.
On their side?
That's right. So they're actually, we thought originally that they were going to have to extend the water line,
Yeah.
but they do not have to. There is actually water in front of their property that they can tie into.
And the drive lane is all gonna be done at one time, or is that top one, by block 1?
They haven't given me a phase plan on that, so I suspect since they have not done that, that it'll be done at the same time. I can tell you that the lot 1's not going to be developed at this time. Lot 2 is the one that will be developed with the urgent care. Lot 3 is going to be the one that has a veterinary clinic on there that will at some point be demolished, I believe. But I believe they're trying to get some other developments to come in there with them, so you may not see those 2 lots move as fast as you'll see lot 2 move. But as Tim said,
We have a commit on that it is gonna be emergent care? I mean, is there a?
that's what's been in their plans that they propose, and so they're so far along now that it would be not cost effective to change that idea.
It's what's been driving this.
Yeah, I had heard rumors, and there was great expectations within the city that there's gonna be an X-ray, possibility there, and,
As far as what's in the building, if they're going to do X-rays or not, I cannot answer that.
Yeah,
But it's going to be an urgent care that you can actually go to for urgent care.
Not 24 hours,
Yeah.
but, probably extended hours.
Yeah. You know, and to refer to Tim's point, just to clarify, when they do plats like this, and we're going to hold their final plat for recordation, they can still get permits at the same time. They're just under the understanding, as a cost-effective way to do everything at the same time, instead of making this take so long, that they have to do all these items to get a CO. So they've been told, we've met about it multiple times, and they're okay with it. It's something that the city does to try to work with developers to save them time.
Do you know what the footprint available in Lot 2 is as far as square foot?
I'd have to review the plans to see what that square footage is, to be quite honest with you.
It looks tight. I mean, just looking at it,
that's
just
the
looking at it,
driveway
it looks
easement.
tight. with
It's going to be a
setbacks.
driveway, essentially, is what they're proposing.
But
What's that, Joe?
I think it's 85 feet wide and quite long.
Yeah, the lot 2 is 85 roughly and 234 in length is the lot size. As far as the structure of what the square footage is going to be, I'd have to look at what they're proposing. Those plans are going to be reviewed by our building official here soon.
but it's commercial, so it's not like a restaurant where you have to have one parking space per table. I mean,
Well, so this one's going to have different parking requirements. So
Yeah.
restaurants have the most strict parking requirements because they gather the most individuals to go there. As far as this, it's going to be based off their square footage of their structure. And so they're required a certain amount of parking spots for every amount of square footage. And then some of those parking spots have to be handicapped. They're aware of all this when we met with them. I've given them that parking requirement number, but it's been a year and I've slept since then. And I just don't remember what that number is.
Can you share who is developing the urgent care? Is it a Central Texas hospital or is it a private?
The individual that I've been working with, his name is Winston Parks. I'd have to look at whom he's with because I believe he's the developer, but not the actual person that's going to occupy the site. So I'd have to see. You know, the only thing I can give you is the name of it, which is Integrity Urgent Care.
and read me staff recommendations again.
So staff recommends approval. The only thing we ask is that you add the drive lane easement to be in perpetuity, and then we're just asking for clarification on if that easement overlaps the drive lane. If it does, don't let it do that. If it doesn't, then just keep it as is. But
You consider those notations if we say we pass it with notations?
yeah, staff would recommend just pass it with those two comments. They're really straightforward comments that the developer can answer within 5 minutes and have that fixed. It's not major items that are holding this plat up.
I make a motion that we approve it with those two recommendations that the city staff made. That we refer it to the city.
Motion made, motion seconded that we approve with notations, or the two notes. All those in favor, right hand. Motion made, seconded, and carries. Action item 7, consider and take any necessary action on a recommendation to the city council regarding a final plat submitted by Juan Pettis for property located at 1635 North FM 908 into 2 lots. Hello, familiar old friend.
Okay, so you have just seen this plat. So for those that weren't here last time, the question was the northern lot was less than 1 acre, and the county has requirements based on how you get your water on what your lot size requirements are. And so in this instance, this individual has a well already. So he needs to have a minimum of a 1 acre piece for each lot. And so they have since changed it. So you'll see the northern lot is now 1 acre right on the dot, and then the rest of it has just shrunk a little bit. As far as staff comments, there are not any. They've addressed them all. I will make the caveat that this does take health department approval from my own county. They are the responsible authority when someone has a septic system, which you'll see that in this brown and this rectangle is their drain field that we asked for them to provide on where their septic is going. And so their approval, if they have any comments, I will give them to the applicant at that time, and they'll have to make those changes. They shouldn't have any comments because I've already reached out one time, and they've given me, that's how we knew about the lot size requirements and things of that nature, is because I reached out ahead of time. So I'm hoping that we'll get their approval, but if it doesn't, just so the planning commission knows, it won't have to come back to you guys. It will just be comments from them that they'll have to adjust and make before we can sign off on it. So as far as
They are aware, you have talked with them.
I've talked to the applicant a few times, and so I've told him I've already sent it to the county, and I told him it's going to go back through this process one more time to ensure. And so I'm hoping it'll be pretty clean. But as far as the rest of the items, just for our new commission, I usually color code the plat for you guys because plats are pretty tough to read when it's just not color coded at all. So the blue and yellow here is a public utility easement because that's where your water, your sewer, your electrical can go. And then this yellow here is a purely just electrical easement, so I've color coded it that way just so you guys know what some of these lines are referring to, and it's just easier to read. But there's no issues with any of that. I just wanted to point that out because once you start seeing plats from me, you'll see, you saw in the other one that there's colors on it, and those colors do have different meanings.
Staff recommendation,
Staff recommends approval as is.
question?
A motion that we approve as is.
Motion to approve as is.
Second.
Motion to approve as is, a second. All those in favor, right hand. Motion made, seconded, and carries. You have something else for us?
We have a presentation. We do. I apologize in advance for this presentation because it is going to be boring.
Duly warned.
But it's needed. We have such a new commission. I was talking to Shanna about it, and we really want to go over the boards and commissions training with you guys just to make sure we're all on the same page because this is recorded, and I can't stress how important it is that we operate how we're supposed to be operating. So I'll take the clicker from you. So I'll try to breeze through this as fast as possible. If you have any questions, stop me. You can interrupt at any point if you have any questions on it. It's pretty self-explanatory. Okay, so what we're going to talk about what our form of government is, the Open Meetings Act, Public Information Act, Code of Ethics, and then we'll briefly go over Robert's Rules. Again, I'm going to fly through this because most of you already know all these, especially if you served on a commission before. So the form of government that we have is the council manager. So it's essentially like a corporation where you have a stockholder that elects a board of directors who then hire a chief executive officer to manage the corporation. So how the city does it, voters elect city council employs the city manager then employs staff to manage different departments. Now, the powers that the city council has is they're our legislative body. They approve the budget. They can set the tax rate. They appoint the city manager, and then they're the policy makers. They also appoint members to the boards, and then they're also subject to state law. They can remove a member from a board. Now, typically, boards and commissions are established by code of ordinances. I will tell you guys that you are special. You are actually in our charter, is what specifies your requirements. You're typically appointed 2 or 3 year terms, and then if you have too many absences, it could lead to getting removed from the board, so just keep that in mind. If you're going to be absent, please let Shanna know ahead of time, because we have a lot of topics that are subject to state law that require a certain timeline for approval, and so if we don't make a quorum, it does not stop that item from moving forward. So you could have a dangerous plat come in, it doesn't meet your city standards, we don't meet as a planning commission, it moves forward as is to the city council without your comments on it.
Question.
Yes.
You let Doug know. Are you letting her know?
He has been. So if
Okay.
I know you guys have messaged each other before, so if you want to message Doug, if you don't have Shannon's number, is any way to let us know somehow, some way, so that way we can start preparing if we know we're not going to have a quorum?
But the correct way is to email Shannon. Is that better?
Yeah.
Any way that lets Shannon know is the correct way. However you want to handle that is you, whichever way is more convenient for you. If it's texting Doug because you have his number on speed dial and maybe not Shannon's, that's perfectly fine.
Okay, cool.
So with only a few exceptions, city boards are just advisory boards. The city charter prohibits city council from giving orders publicly or privately to city employees, and then board and commission members are not authorized to speak on an official capacity for the city. So I will keep that in mind. Where my mother works, a planning commission member actually went on the record and said something about an Elon Musk project, and so I will remind you that you will actually be approached maybe at times by news reporters to comment, and just know whatever you say can be on the record. Just as I stress that this is recorded, whatever you say here may also be put on the paper. So a good rule of thumb is if you don't want it to be quoted from you, you probably don't want to say it. So let's get into the Open Meetings Act. Open Meetings Act is basically saying your meeting has to be open to the public, and then unless you're going to go into a closed meeting, which we'll discuss a little bit later on, the city is required to post it 72 hours in advance. That's soon going to change into 3 business days in advance that we have to have the agenda posted. And then on that notice, it has to discuss what you guys are going to talk about.
Question, Ben.
Uh-huh.
On the slide before. So when you're speaking in the public, could you say, not as a representation of the board, but as a community member?
Yeah, we're
This is
gonna
what
get into that. That's a
Okay.
good question. But yes, there is a way that we'll actually start talking about your social media here in a little bit, and you can operate on a personal basis and not a city. And there's a way to actually represent that.
Ben, that gets kind of fuzzy on our Friday. If we post in the afternoon, that still counts as that business day?
Well, so right now it's only 72 hours. So when we post on Friday, you have Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. But what's going to happen is essentially we're going to have to start posting things on Wednesdays because
Yeah,
it's 3 business
that's-
days now. And so a business day is a weekday. So it'd be Thursday, Friday, Monday. So it makes the city have to get a packet out a lot faster
Yeah.
than it used to.
Yeah.
We've been operating under that premise for the most part because council has asked for the packet to be earlier. But now we're just required by state law to do it instead of just doing it because we wanted to get it to them earlier. So the bodies that are subject to open meetings is obviously your city council, your planning and zoning commission, and then any other advisory boards or committees that have an agenda have to be open to the public. Again, it has to be 72
Hang on,
hours
hang
before.
on. Dumb question from Dougie.
Uh-huh.
The Historic Society, we don't have an agenda, right?
The preservation board.
Preservation Board, we don't have an agenda? Or-
Right. So it would be the same operation. So again, just to back up and give background, if you haven't been told, Janie, and Nathan. You're on two boards instead of one. You're on a board that hasn't met yet before. It's a historical commission board. Essentially what happens, somebody wants to be a historical property, we'll open that meeting up, but there will be an agenda to answer your question. So it'll be under the same thing, because when you have an item for action, it has to be listed on the agenda to take action. So I gave the example, if a citizen comes and speaks during citizens communication and brings up a really good topic that maybe we want to take action on, we still cannot. We'd have to wait till the next meeting to actually put it on the agenda to take action on that item. So it'd be the same for the historical commission. If somebody came in and said, I want my property to be a historically designated property, then you'll see it on the next meeting, because we can't act on it right then and there. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, sorry about that, but it was kind of fuzzy in my brain there,
Yeah.
so yeah, it makes sense now.
Yeah, you can't even discuss it, you can't take action.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk about this with you guys because we got to be careful on quorums. So a quorum cannot confer about board and commission business outside of the open meeting. And so a walking quorum cannot discuss the business of that commission. So you cannot even get to a number that would constitute a quorum. So you can't, as Doug, as our chair, can't reach out to Janie, and then Janie reach out to Charles, and then Charles reach out to Joan, and then Joan reach out to Justin, and so on and so forth, to make a quorum. If you hit that total of you are talking about a topic, even if you're not all together talking about it, you've just constituted a walking quorum. So just keep that in mind, that you'll want to stay away from that. You can discuss maybe amongst yourselves every once in a while, but just make sure that you don't keep reaching out to everybody and discussing the same topics.
So Janie could talk to Charles, or Doug could talk to Joan, but Janie could talk to Charles, who talks to Doug, who talks to Joan.
Yeah. And so the other part that I want to highlight is in that underline. It doesn't matter how you do it. Janie can meet with Charles in person, and then Janie can call Doug, and then Doug can send an email to Joan. It's how you're doing that. It still adds together. It's not the same avenue of communication that counts towards that. So just keep that in mind as you start discussing business, maybe at one at a time.
And is that about the same exact topic? Or is it?
It is about the topic. So any board and commission related business. So we'll say if we were talking about a new ordinance for signage again, and y'all started talking about it amongst each other, then you could get into that walking quorum if you've talked to too many.
Even a group complaint, if you answer a text back and say, I really dread this ordinance
Yeah.
or whatever, you're already in yellow flag territory.
And so what I can say to that is you can still talk to each other in a group chat format, but you cannot talk about commission business. So you can text each other and say, I'm not going to be there, I'm going to be there, but you can't say, man, I really think we should do this with this ordinance when we talk next time. That's a quorum.
And it also prohibits one member from sending an email to everybody else expressing their position on a particular issue. Even though nobody else responds to that, you can't communicate your position to everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Group text or group email.
Yeah, it does not take a response back from your individuals to hit that total number. It's because you've started that conversation. So it is a walking quorum. And then of course the golden rule to follow by if that gets difficult to follow is if the public is deprived of the opportunity to see or hear the officials in action, then you should just avoid the communication altogether. Okay, so let's talk about social media now. So on social media, posts or comments, you could still have a quorum even on that, and it would be a violation. It does not apply if you have social meetings unrelated to the public business. If you go to a convention or seminar that's giving a class, that does not count. If you testify before your legislature or different state agencies, that does not count. And candidate forums don't count. So a closed meeting, we haven't had one here at the Planning Commission, but if you watch any of the city council meetings, they tend to have them quite often now. And they're limited in scope of what that can be. You cannot just meet in closed meetings for anything just because you don't want to say it on the mic. And some common examples, if they need to seek advice for an attorney, if they're going to discuss real estate or any personnel or economic development. The notice has to be posted on the agenda, and then they must start and end the meeting in open session. So if they go into closed session, they have to announce they're going into closed session. They'll discuss behind private doors. They'll come back out. They'll open it back up to the floor, and then they'll make their motion from there. They won't discuss what has happened in that closed session because you cannot legally discuss what happens in closed session. So if we ever have one, just keep that in mind, that whatever is said back there would not be repeated back on a public mic. So there is a stipulation, if something happens during the meeting that requires you to seek legal advice, you may convene into the closed meeting for that purpose, and then you're allowed to use a telephone or video conference to discuss that with your attorney. Now, the public has the right to speak at your meetings. They can either speak during the citizen communication portion, they can speak on a item listed on the agenda, or during a public hearing. I do want to emphasize to you guys, you will see public hearings quite often at the Planning Commission, and that is a moment for the public to speak on that topic. It's not a discussion item. Because what follows a public hearing is the action item, and that's when you guys will discuss it. So they may come up here and ask you questions. It's not really something to have a back and forth conversation about. You're just going to listen to whatever they wanted to say, whichever way they're leaning, and then you'll close the public hearing, and then we'll actually have that discussion in the action item portion.
That's sometimes hard, isn't it?
It
You
is.
wanna be able to respond, or
That's right.
that is what it is.
So now there is times that you actually can have some discussion with the citizen on citizens' comments that are not on the agenda. So you can discuss these following things with them. You can discuss whether to place it on the future agenda or to refer it to the department that it should go to. You can only state factual information in response, or you can recite the policy. Typically, it'll go to the chair, city manager, or city staff person who presents, and they'll respond to that and say that they'll review it and respond back to them later on.
Are we allowed to ask like somebody to elaborate while they're doing citizen communication? Clarification, is that?
You can ask for clarification. You just wouldn't get into a back and forth conversation of, you would simply ask it in a way of like, can you clarify what you mean by that, or just elaborate further.
Yeah.
So on citizens communications, you have to limit their time uniformly, and again, it's not a question and answers topic. What's followed by the minutes? Shanna keeps your minutes just so you know, so when you review them, it is not a verbatim minutes, and so it is just a summary of what you guys discussed and how you voted. And then there's always an official set with the city if you've ever wanted to look at them outside of your packets. They're also posted online. Okay. So let's get into the violations. So action may be set aside by a court, but can usually be cured by a subsequent meeting. Crimes where members knowingly conspire to circumvent the act in less than a quorum for secret deliberations to unknowingly benefit or knowingly benefit is legal. And then crime to participate in a closed meeting knowing that the certified agenda is not being created or it's not being taped is also a crime. Then you also cannot disclose that to the public. And then if you do, you could be liable to whatever damages you cause to that development, that person, whomever that may have been about. And so we'll get into the Texas Public Information Act quickly. It's similar to the Federal Freedom of Information Act. It essentially applies to information that's collected from the city. Any information that's collected, the city owns or the city has a right to access. So just know when we email you the agendas, and if there's ever a discussion on your emails about city business, it could be liable to be in an open records request, and you would have to forfeit that over an open records request. So this is anything that's collected, assembled, or maintained under a law or ordinance or in connection with a transaction of official city business is considered public information. So in the highlight, I want to express this. If you have a personal phone, just know if you talk about city business on your personal phone and a record comes in that you have to give that up, it will include your personal phone. It can include text message, emails, any social media post that may be on behalf of the city. It's any form of information essentially that's on behalf of the city. You could be subject to forfeiting if someone has requested that information. So just keep that in mind.
Public information refers to something that is in writing, either digitally or physically. It's not something that someone made a public information request or piece of information that we knew, but you have to actually create it to be able to give it to them. That's not something we have to do.
Yeah, it's something that already exists, that has already happened. And so if you have spoken about it and it's in your emails, then you have to confiscate that email. Shanna would be reaching out to you because she does our open records request and say, I've gotten this open records request. I need any text messages, emails, social media posts that you have regarding this topic. Now, again, under the highlight, it's about the content of the message that determines if it's a public record. So you're not safe if it's just because it's on a personal device. It does not make that message personal if the content in it is not personal. We're going to skip through that part. That's not important to you guys. Now I want to talk about the deleting of public records. You cannot, by state law, delete social media posts or comments regarding city-related matter. And then the record retention policy is generally 2 years. This applies to your emails, text messages, and social media posts and comments. And then just remember that emails are not deleted until you double delete, and text messages and social media posts are never gone. So this is what I talked to you guys about saying something on an open mic or getting talked about to a reporter. If you don't want it to be posted on the front page, potentially, then you probably should not be saying it. Now we'll get into the Code of Ethics. Our Code of Ethics is governed by Article, I'm not good with Roman numerals, was it 12?
12.
12.
One quick question. That was an extremely thorough explanation of public information in open meetings. Is that, if that will meet their requirement for open records training?
I have no idea. Yeah, but this is yeah. So this the reason I'm telling you guys is this applies to city employees, but it also applies to you guys because you are acting on behalf of the city now. So you are part of the city.
We got chicks today first.
So the purpose of the Code of Ethics is to ensure public officials are independent, impartial, and responsible only to the citizens. It prevents any special interest from happening, prevents the public office from being used for personal gain, and ensures that the board and commissioners are non-bipartisan. So this gets into the city, but it's also good practice for the board. So we are not supposed to accept any gifts from anyone, especially if it's above $50. I'll tell you as a planner myself, I can't accept any gift no matter what the price of it is because I am under a different code of ethics for AICP. I'm not AICP yet, but when I get there, I can't accept any gifts. So if you ever offer me anything and I tell you no, do not take offense to that, just so you know.
So a developer can't take you out to eat to talk to you?
Yeah, not for me. Others would be governed under this $50 rule. So you guys, if somebody gives you a gift, you can accept it under $50. I will give the personal recommendation. It's just best to not accept any type of gifts because then you just don't get into that gray area of any type of favoritism because they gave you a really tasty snack or anything like that.
And that's not cumulative, that's the total.
That's the total of the gift. Yeah.
Can't be three $50
Yeah.
steaks.
So it would.
Ain't
Yeah.
too many restaurants going over
Well,
50.
it would probably be cumulative. That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, but I would imagine it's cumulative. That if they provide you a whole, I don't know, buffet of different types of food, if that buffet is a total of $50 or more, then you really shouldn't be accepting that.
Yeah. Seafood restaurant to get you there.
Okay, again, it specifies that we're not supposed to have special treatment for anybody. We can't disclose any information that could affect anybody. We can't use information to gain by reason for any personal gain. And then we cannot transact business on behalf of the city with any entity with which the officer, member, agent, or officer has a substantial interest. So we'll get into what substantial interest is. So by the local government code, these are the bullet points for substantial interest. It's if you own 10% of the share of the voting stock of the business entity or at least $15,000 of the fair market value, or if you have funds received by the official from the business entity that exceeds 10% of the official's gross income for the previous year, and it's reasonably foreseeable that an action on the matter will have a special economic effect on the business entity or the official distinguishable on the effect of the public. So you'll have to watch out for that. If that happens, this may be further in the slides, I can't recall. If you have a special interest in something, there is a process that you'll go with Shanna to actually not take action on that item. You would sit out, what's the word I'm looking for, Shanna? Recuse yourself. And there's actually a form you would fill out that would state why you're recusing yourself, because you're required to meet one of those requirements to recuse yourself. Abstain. Because if you're related to somebody, and we'll get into that later on, you have to abstain, and you have to put why. If you abstain for a reason that's not eligible, then it's considered a no vote. So just keep that in mind.
And you're actually, if you do recuse yourself or abstain, you're actually supposed to step down off the dais
Yeah.
and not participate or influence
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah. If you're abstaining, what Tim is saying is you would essentially remove yourself because you do not want to influence that conversation at all. And so
It's not just about not voting.
That's right.
It's about not participating.
you just
So whenever I propose my,
you're a good example. When you proposed your code amendment, you would have, if you were on the commission at the time,
commission,
you would
well,
have
I have to-
abstained.
I have to bring something
Yeah.
before y'all or everybody again later.
Yeah. So if
I
you do
would
it
recuse
again,
myself, or
you-
else I have to get with you. And
That's right. And it-
because I didn't know that there was a document or anything. I just
Yes.
knew that I would have to recuse myself. So.
yeah, we have to keep official record on that. And what I'll say is, when we send out those agendas to you guys, there should be names on there. But if you have questions on if you think you may have any type of interest in it, call me, and I'll give you some more details about the project. So that way we can discuss it. Because it's easier ahead of time to fill out that paperwork than to find out during the meeting than having to do that.
Tim, are you saying that the person needs to leave the room?
Technically, yes.
We haven't done that in the past. They
I've never-
speak up at the beginning. This is fairly new to me, this process. So I don't wanna get caught in this. It's best to notify Shanna and so that everybody's aware of it when the item comes up for discussion. And you want our procedure now to also include physical
Well, what I would say is,
separation?
if you think you might, notify Shanna, we'll confirm that that's whether the case. When the item comes up on the agenda, you just announce that I have a conflict of interest, or I need to excuse myself, or recuse myself. And then, if you just sit there quietly and not look at anybody, I've never heard, there's some people, some cities will actually have them leave the room.
Yeah.
Some people will not, but the idea behind that is that, number one, you don't take part in the conversation, and number two, you can't glare at somebody, if they're.
Well, the word influence was up, yeah.
Yeah.
Cocking your pistol is probably not.
That's right. Yeah, that's the whole point of it. And so
Got you.
satisfy the right to leave the room. To get into the real property, if you have substantial interest, it's if you have any special economic effect on the property. It also defines that if you have any ownership above fair market value of $2,500 and you have a substantial interest in that property. A person that has substantial interest is if the person is related to him in the first degree. And there's actually going to be a table that talks about this, so that would include a husband, wife, a father, mother, children, stepchildren, father-in-law, mother-in-law, son-in-law. It does not include any brother or sisters, uncle, aunts, grandfather, grandmother, cousins, or former spouses. So if you have a question or if you want this slide, we can send it to you guys separately if you feel that you're going to have people come in that may be related to you in some way. So what you shall do is you shall make your substantial interest known immediately. You shall abstain from any further participation. And then as the paper that I was talking about, you'll file a conflict disclosure statement with the city secretary. So the rule is if a member commits an offense, he knowingly participates in a vote or decision on any matter involving a business entity or real property which they have substantial interest. And then failure to file the affidavit and to abstain constitute a Class A misdemeanor, which could be fined up to $4,000 or a 1-year jail sentence. Okay, so the standards of conduct is the city officer, and again, this is going to apply to you guys as best practice, is shall not engage in outside activities which would conflict or be incompatible with the official services to the city. They shall not accept or engage outside activities incompatible with full and proper discharge of duties with the city, which might impair their judgment in performance of city duties. And they shall not receive any fee or compensation for the services that they provide, except if the state law allows it. They shall not represent directly or indirectly or appear on behalf of a private interest of another before a board, commission, or authority in any proceeding involving the city, any litigation to which the city might be a party, and then before the board or commission of which that person is a member, or before the city council or any appellate board of which the official is a member. So you shall not use your prestige of your position on behalf of any political party in a way that gives the impression of being endorsed by the government of the city, and knowingly perform or refuse to perform any act in order to deliberately thwart the execution of city ordinances, rules, or regulations. You shall not use city supplies, equipment, or facilities for any purpose other than conducting official city business, engage willfully or knowingly in any dishonest act, or be convicted of any crime involving moral turpitude in connection with their duties, and knowingly disclose confidential information obtained in executive session. You shall not fail to maintain your professionalism and common courtesy when commenting on city matters and official business, make in his or her official capacity derogatory comments against individuals or entities, including but not limited to your social media context, and violate the city communications policy. So this is the city's communication policy. All email communications regarding city business should be conducted through an official email. That doesn't necessarily apply to you guys. I would recommend, if you want to separate this out due to the Public Information Act, get that email to Shanna of whatever your professional email is going to be, and that will be the one that will send you all of our city business on, so that way you can have a personal account and then a business email account. You're responsible for preserving your text and voicemails concerning city business. You should remove appointed titles from your profiles for personal social media accounts, and then you usually want to include a statement on a personal social media account that says something along the lines of this is my personal page. You know, I told Shanna about this, and there was a recent court ruling on a city manager, and I don't remember where he was from, but he had a personal page on Facebook, and he decided to delete/block some users' comments from his posts because they were very negative, and the court ruled that it was his personal page, so he could do so. But if it was a city official page, as in that was his city manager page, then he cannot do that. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to have a personal Facebook page, then you can actually block users on that if they're being negative, or if for whatever reason you may want to block somebody or delete a comment. But just know, if you have a official page, you have to allow everybody to comment on it. You cannot block anybody from it. It has to be a public page. So I always recommend to stay out of that city business side on your personal pages if you can. Create another page if you want to start talking about the Planning and Zoning Commission, all the great things that we do here. But I would keep it off your personal page, because then you run into that. You don't have as much freedom on your personal page as you may want at that point while you're with the city.
And by simply stating that you're a member of a committee like this could open that door.
That's right. That's right, because I believe on that city manager's page, it clearly said it was his personal account. It did not. I think it had his occupation in there, because Facebook asks you what you do for a living, and he put his occupation as city manager, but it wasn't a city official page, and I believe it had the verbiage in there that it was personal. I may be misremembering, but it was essentially identified as a personal page. But they did say, if this said the city manager of Rockdale page, then Tim cannot go and block people from commenting on his Facebook page.
Yeah. Question.
Mm-hmm.
How many more slides do we have?
We have a few more. I'm not going to get into Robert's rules, so we're actually almost done. Okay. But I'm going to be quick. But you've been here before if you want to leave. You've done this training before.
I'm going to leave on the first.
Repeat yourself.
Yeah. Okay, so
Personal prestige.
going back on the communication policy, so if you have an official social media page, then you should include a statement that says something along the lines of, if you want to communicate with me regarding City of Rockdale, Planning and Zoning Commission, business, or other social media, you should do first at whatever account you want them to email you on instead of your personal page. That would clearly distinguish that this is a personal page and not a business page. You want to redirect information requests to any official city sources. Do not post relating to your official duties or an official capacity as any appointed city officer, and do not post or comment on behalf of the city or the board and commission. So once your social media account is open for political dialogue, it's transformed into a public forum at that point, and then you have to grant everybody their First Amendment rights to speak. To hide rather than delete clearly inappropriate public comments on your personal or social media page. When in doubt, don't block the user, just consult with the legal counsel if necessary, and then avoid responding to inappropriate comments or personal attacks on social media. Additional standards, we ask for your attendance at all meetings unless you're excused. You must notify the chairperson or city secretary prior to your absence, and then the validity of the excuse would be decided by the membership of the council or the board if it came into question. And then if you excuse yourself halfway through a meeting, just know that that does count as a complete absence. It will show in the minutes that you're here for half of it, but if council determined that you're missing too many meetings, just know that that actually does count that you missed a meeting. So violations of code of ethics, sworn complaint alleging violation must be filed with the city secretary. The city secretary then provides the complaint to the affected officer or a member of city council or board. The officer is encouraged to provide a written answer, and then the council may perform any investigation to determine if the complaint has any truth behind it, and then they could take any appropriate action after that. So the council may issue a statement finding the complaint without merit. They can issue a letter of nomination or reprimand, or they can remove the officer from the position. And then we will not get into Robert's rules. Essentially what Robert rules tells you, to make this quick, is if you want to make a motion, you're supposed to say that I'm motioning for this. You'll then have a second, and then you can have discussion after that. And then you're required to vote on all the topics unless you abstain yourself from there. And then you need to speak clearly into the mic, as it is official record at that point. And then, is there any questions as far as that? Because we can go deeper into this, but I think you guys know this by now as far as the open meetings, the Robert's rules part. So I don't want to waste your time, because this one is the most lengthy part of the section.
I have a question, not about Robert's rules, but how would you advise members of this commission to manage phone calls from citizens? I know there's been quite a few phone calls made to at least a member that's no longer on here, but how would you advise as far as communicating?
So if it's a constructive phone call, as if they have a genuine question about maybe something you guys are taking action on, you can feel free to answer that to your ability. I would also say, even after you answer that, refer them to myself at that point to get further information if they need additional help, is how I'd advise to do that. You don't have to take the calls. Even if they're negative calls, any call that you get that has a concern, I will take the phone call and then assist them, because I have, most of the time I'm the one creating the ordinance, so I'm going to have a deeper understanding of where we're at. And so if you guys want to forward those calls, you can feel free to do so. I have a city cell phone that takes text messages if they don't like to call.
Advise them to attend a meeting and sign up to speak?
That's right. You can also advise them that way. I've done that a few times where I've gotten some phone calls that they had an idea that wasn't necessarily in line with the comp plan, and I told them to come to citizen communication and speak. You can always advise them in that way. I would keep it pretty general as a recommendation. I wouldn't get into too many specifics. I would give them the overlay and then maybe refer them to the profession of whoever it affects. Most likely in y'all's cases, it's going to be me that you'd refer them to. But there may be some that you get a police department phone call about junk vehicles, because they know you guys talk about code enforcement. You can refer them to the police non-emergency number. But
So I'd also ask if you do get calls like that, to let Ben or I know, so we can, if they have a question, we need to research the answer to for the call. I just know that you've gotten a call that somebody may be reaching out to us regarding a particular issue.
yeah. Same with social media posts. If on your personal pages y'all start getting more social media posts, if we adopt an ordinance that maybe people have questions on or concerns, that you refer to them, you may reply on there and say, you may call the city hall phone number and speak to Ben Blanchard about it, or speak to Tim Kelty about it, or however, to give them that helpful information to help them get to that next step, but not necessarily you having to be the responsible one to answer those questions.
Or if you see something that is concerning, let us know. I don't personally follow Facebook very, very closely. I do have access to it, but we'd like to get those kind of heads up. So, and we do have by the way, a new communications person, our community engagement, Diego Hernandez. So hopefully he's going to be a little bit more engaged on social media to respond to some of those concerns citizens of Rockdale, Rockdale residents need to know.
Yeah, I'll say this.
To keep it as simple as possible and
Yeah.
not necessarily discuss your opinion about.
It'll be,
Well,
we talked about that yesterday. It'll be factual responses and.
Well, I'll say, it'd also be beneficial to you guys to keep it brief, especially if it's on a private page, to just keep in mind that Public Information Act, because that discussion is public information at that point. So you don't want to get into a back and forth and then get called in for an open records request, and then we find that your conduct was in violation of the ethics policy.
Exactly. I think it's important for the new folks to.
Yeah. To reiterate what Tim said, I also don't get on Facebook. I don't think social media is productive, so I don't use it. So if you see anything on there that needs city attention, I have a Facebook page. You want to forward it to me, you probably want to email me instead, and then I'll go and look at it and assist whoever needs assistance. But it's not something that I'm naturally going to see either. So if you forward it, and I'll look at it and I'll assist them.
Yeah, try to keep an eye on the Rockdale stuff, obviously.
Yeah, because I'm not a part of the group. I think there's a Rockdale residents need to know, and I think there's a few others.
There's
so much-
2.0 one too.
There's
Yeah.
so much misinformation too out there. It's like,
Yeah, I would encourage you to say there is going to be a lot of misinformation. The commissioners that have been here dealt with the parking on grass, and there was a lot of misinformation spread. There's a lot of valid concern that I will say, but you just don't want to get into that back and forth with somebody. You just want it to be productive and beneficial, and that just typically doesn't come from social media. I met with several citizens in person regarding that issue, and it was very productive. So production happens in person, usually not on social media.
And it's also good if you can, and you know that's gonna be on the council agenda, like the time that they, the open meeting about the parking situation. It's good to be here, so you know what's going on.
Yeah.
Advise them to come to a meeting.
I mean, you get so much factual information just by watching the P&Z meetings and city councils on YouTube.
And that's something, yeah.
So, I mean,
You know, and I will bring that point. You know, if you have somebody that can't make the meeting, make sure to let them know we have a YouTube.
Yeah.
Because we average probably about 100 views now, which is good, but I mean,
Yeah.
you know, we
I
wanted to
watch
see
it.
more, but if someone has a concern or anything, I mean, we post all these things on YouTube. Unless we have a technical difficulty, which is very rare,
Yeah.
we post it on YouTube so you can go back and watch it. I watch them often because there's times that I need to know what you guys motioned, and I don't quite understand what you motioned, so I'll go back and watch it. And so it's beneficial.
And as an added bonus, we give extra brownie points for people that watch us
Yeah.
on YouTube
Yeah.
when they're applying for planning and zoning.
Yeah.
I've
So-
heard a lot of people say that they really do and welcome that
Yeah,
YouTube stuff.
I saw that and I was like, hey.
that's where my interest came
Mm-hmm.
from watching.
Yep, same here. Yep.
So with that, is there any questions you guys have about? I went over that really fast because it is a very boring presentation. So I wanted to be quick. Is there any questions you want to talk about, or are we all on a good page that we can adjourn?
I will tell you, so as a board member, there is a requirement that you take Open Meetings Act and Public Information training. It's available online. Shannon has that. You get a certificate when you complete it.
She sent the email you sent, right? Yeah, we got it. Yeah, we got it. Yeah.
Yeah, you have
90 days?
months,
Yeah.
90
When I walked in, I was like, I think it was 90 days. I hope it wasn't 30 days.
It's 90. It's just an hour video you watch. It's very easy. But if you have any other questions, you just reach out to me.
Just be aware that if you're watching it on x2, the slide that gives you the code to put in is really fast.
Oh.
So I had to watch it like 3 times, and I slowed it down. I was like, oh, there it is. I found it. Yeah.
All right, any other questions regarding our workshop?
Good.
Ben, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
New
I-
members, welcome on board.
I just want to give one warning before you adjourn. The legislature has updated their legislative body and what their codes within that. And so for those that have watched old planning commission meetings, we've given presentations before. Those are equally as boring. They're going to be coming up soon. So just warning you. But they're real beneficial information because they're going to talk about plating requirements, subdivision requirements. So that way you know what we're bound by, that we actually do have different rules and regulations that prevent us from doing certain things.
Okay, with that being said, it is 3:14. I adjourn the meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission of July 1, 2025. Thank you.